Hello, story lovers! Tonight, we're diving into a tale of passion, secrets, and choices that could change everything. Hearts will be broken, love will be tested, and every twist will leave you on the edge of your seat. Comment below where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, hit like, subscribe. Share it with someone who loves a powerful love story. And tap the bell so you never miss the next thrilling chapter. Ready? Let's begin, asterisk. Rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 52nd floor as Julian Blackstone stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Watching the city blur into watercolor streaks below, at 35 he commanded a technology empire worth $12 billion. His reflection in the glass showed a man sculpted by ruthless ambition, dark hair perfectly styled, steel-gray eyes that missed nothing, and a jawline sharp enough to cut glass. Everything about Julian Blackstone was calculated, controlled, and cold. His assistant knocked softly. "Mr. Blackstone, the car is ready for the charity gala." Julian turned, adjusting his custom Italian suit. Tonight was the annual Children's Hope Foundation Gala, an event he attended not out of compassion, but because appearances mattered. Wealthy donors expected to see him there. And Julian never disappointed when it came to maintaining his carefully crafted image. Across the city, in a modest apartment in Queens, 20-year-old Maya Rivera braided her 7-year-old daughter's dark hair with gentle fingers. Emma sat patiently, her bright green eyes sparkling with excitement about the special evening ahead. "Mama, are you nervous about working at the fancy party tonight?" Emma asked, her small voice filled with concern. Maya smiled, though worry lines creased her forehead. "A little, sweetheart. But this job pays enough to cover your new school uniform and those art supplies you wanted." The truth was more complicated. Maya held 2 master's degrees from Columbia University in international relations and economics, but circumstances had forced her into service jobs to make ends meet quickly. Working as a server at elite events paid better than her cafe job. Even though it meant spending nights away from Emma, Mrs. Chen from next door will read you 3 stories tonight, Maya promised, kissing her daughter's forehead. "I'll be home before you wake up." Emma hugged her mother tightly. "You're the best mama in the whole world." Even if some people don't see how special you are, the Metropolitan Museum's grand ballroom glittered like a jewel box. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing lights across marble floors, where New York's elite mingled in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. The air hummed with the quiet power of old money and new fortunes, perfumed with expensive cologne and fresh orchids. Julian moved through the crowd like a predator through water, his presence commanding attention without effort. Board members approached him with deference, seeking his approval for various initiatives. Women in glittering dresses cast appreciative glances his way, but his expression remained distant, untouchable. Maya entered through the service entrance wearing the standard black uniform that marked her as invisible to most guests. She carried herself with quiet dignity, her dark hair pulled back in an elegant bun that revealed the graceful line of her neck. Despite the simple uniform, there was something regal about her posture, something that spoke of strength beneath the surface. She balanced a tray of champagne flutes as she navigated the crowded ballroom. Conversations flowing around her like water, filled with mentions of stock prices, vacation homes in the Hamptons, and charitable tax deductions. Near the auction display, she paused to serve a group of women discussing their latest purchases. Their jewelry alone could have paid Emma's college tuition. But Maya felt no envy, only determination to provide her daughter with opportunities through hard work and education. "Excuse me, could I have another champagne?" a deep voice asked behind her. Maya turned to find herself looking into the coldest gray eyes she had ever seen. Julian Blackstone stood before her, his presence somehow making the spacious ballroom feel smaller. She had recognized him from newspaper photos, but seeing him in person was different. He radiated an almost dangerous magnetism, like standing too close to a live wire. "Of course, sir," Maya replied, offering him a fresh glass from her tray. Their fingers brushed briefly as he took the champagne, and for a moment something flickered in Julian's eyes. Surprise, perhaps at the warmth of her touch or the directness of her gaze. Most service staff looked away when serving him, but Maya met his eyes with quiet confidence. "You're new," he observed, though it sounded more like an accusation than a question. "Tonight, yes," Maya answered simply, not volunteering more information than necessary. Julian studied her face, noting the intelligence in her dark eyes, the way she held herself with pride despite her position. There was something unsettling about this server who looked at him like an equal rather than a superior. As Maya turned to continue serving other guests, her heel caught on the marble floor's edge where it met the carpet. The tray tilted and champagne splashed across the front of Julian's expensive suit. The ballroom seemed to freeze. Conversations halted as heads turned to witness the disaster. Maya's face flushed with mortification as she immediately began apologizing, reaching for napkins to help clean the mess. "I'm so sorry, sir. Please let me help," she said, her voice steady despite her embarrassment. But Julian stepped back sharply, his expression transforming into something arctic. The moment of unexpected connection vanished, replaced by the cold disdain of a man whose pride had been wounded in public. "Incompetent," he said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom like a whip crack. "This suit costs more than you probably make in a year. Perhaps you should stick to jobs that match your skill level." The cruelty in his words struck Maya like a physical blow, but she refused to flinch. Around them, the crowd watched with the fascinated horror of spectators at an accident. "Sir, accidents happen," Maya said quietly, her dignity intact despite his attack. "I offered to help remedy the situation." Julian's eyes narrowed. "Accidents happen when people are careless, when they don't know their place." He gestured dismissively. "Security should remove her before she causes more damage." What happened next surprised everyone, including Julian. Instead of cowering or fleeing, Maya straightened to her full height and looked him directly in the eye. "You're absolutely right, Mr. Blackstone," she said, her voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. "I don't know my place, because my place isn't serving champagne to people who mistake wealth for worth." The silence that followed Maya's words was deafening. Julian felt something shift in the room, a subtle change in the atmosphere as the guests processed what they had just witnessed. A server had just publicly challenged Julian Blackstone, and she wasn't backing down. "You have no idea who you're speaking to," Julian said, his voice low and dangerous. "I know exactly who you are," Maya replied, setting her empty tray down on a nearby table with deliberate precision. "You're Julian Blackstone, CEO of Blackstone Technologies. You've built your empire on the backs of people you consider beneath you. You think money gives you the right to treat others as disposable." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some guests looked scandalized, others intrigued. Julian's jaw tightened as he realized this woman wasn't just defiant. She was informed. "Security," he called out. But Maya wasn't finished. "I have 2 master's degrees from Columbia," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "I speak 4 languages fluently, and I've read every financial report your company has published in the last 3 years. I'm not serving champagne because I lack intelligence. Mr. Blackstone, I'm here because sometimes life forces good people into situations that privileged men like you will never understand." Julian felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Uncertainty. This woman was dismantling his carefully constructed superiority with surgical precision, and doing it in front of the very people whose respect he depended on. "Then perhaps," he said, his voice cutting through the tension, "you should have worked harder to avoid those situations." The cruelty in his words hung in the air like poison. Maya's composure finally cracked, just for a moment, and Julian caught a glimpse of raw pain in her eyes before her mask slipped back in 2. "Place you're right again," she said quietly. "I should have been born rich. How thoughtless of me to choose a middle-class family instead." A few guests actually laughed. Julian felt his control slipping. This wasn't going according to script. He was supposed to be the one with the power, the one who decided how this encounter would end. "Enough," he said sharply. "You're fired. And I'll make sure you never work another event in this city." "I quit," Maya replied, untying her apron. "And Mr. Blackstone? Your champagne is showing." Julian looked down to see a dark stain spreading across his white shirt, where the champagne had soaked through his jacket. When he looked up, Maya was already walking toward the exit, her head held high. But as she reached the ballroom doors, she turned back one final time. "For what it's worth," she called out, her voice carrying across the room, Your company's quarterly projections are overly optimistic. Your Singapore acquisition is hemorrhaging money because you ignored the cultural integration costs. And your AI initiative is 3 years behind schedule because you fired the only programmer who understood the core architecture. Julian felt the blood drain from his face. Those details weren't public knowledge. They weren't in any report she could have read. Which meant, who are you? He demanded, but Maya was already gone, leaving him standing in a stained suit in front of 200 of New York's most influential people. 3 weeks later, Julian couldn't stop thinking about her. He'd had his security team run background checks, hired private investigators, even reached out to Columbia University. Maya Rivera existed, all right? Graduated summa cum laude with dual master's degrees. Wrote her thesis on emerging market economics, and had been offered positions at 3 different investment banks, all of which she'd turned down. The why of it gnawed at him. Julian was used to getting answers, but Maya Rivera remained a puzzle he couldn't solve. Worse, her words about his company had been accurate. Disturbingly, precisely accurate. He was reviewing the Singapore reports for the 100th time when his assistant knocked. "Mr. Blackstone, there's a woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's about Maya Rivera." Julian's head snapped up. "Send her in." The woman who entered his office was in her 70s. With kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of a lifetime of hard work, she looked nervous, but determined. "Mr. Blackstone, I'm Alina Rivera, Maya's grandmother." Julian gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please, sit. What can I do for you, Mrs. Rivera?" Alina perched on the edge of the chair, clutching a worn handbag. "I know what happened at that fancy party. Maya told me everything. And I know she was rude to you, but she wasn't rude," Julian found himself saying, surprising them both. "She was honest." Alina studied his face carefully. "You're not what I expected. What did you expect?" "A monster," Alina said simply. "The way Maya described you, I thought you were pure evil. But you have sad eyes." Julian blinked, taken aback. "I beg your pardon?" "Maya has sad eyes too," Alina continued. "That's why she takes those serving jobs. She's punishing herself." "For what?" Alina was quiet for a long moment. "Her husband died 3 years ago. Car accident. Maya was supposed to be in the car with him, but Emma had a fever, so Maya stayed home." She met Julian's eyes. She blames herself for surviving. Julian felt something cold settle in his chest. And the degrees? She was going to change the world. Be an economist, maybe work for the World Bank. Then David died, and Maya couldn't bear the thought of success without him. So she took jobs where nobody would expect anything from her, where she could just ... disappear. "Why are you telling me this?" Alina leaned forward. "Because I saw the news. Your company's stock dropped 15% after someone leaked those internal projections. And I know Maya well enough to know she's the one who leaked them." Julian's blood chilled. "What?" "She's coming for you, Mr. Blackstone, and I don't think you understand what you're up against." Julian stared at Alina Rivera as her words sank in. "You're saying Maya leaked confidential information about my company?" "I'm saying my granddaughter is brilliant, wounded, and has nothing left to lose," Alina replied. "That's a dangerous combination, Mr. Blackstone." After Alina left, Julian spent the next 2 hours pacing his office. Maya had inside information about his company that she shouldn't have had access to. Information that had cost him $300 million in market value when it leaked to the press. But how? He was still pondering this when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Julian Blackstone. "Hello, Mr. Blackstone. This is Maya Rivera." Julian's hand tightened on the phone. "How did you get this number?" "The same way I got your internal financial reports," Maya said, her voice calm and controlled. "You really should upgrade your cybersecurity. You hacked my company." "I didn't have to." "You left the door wide open." There was a pause. "I'm calling to offer you a deal." Julian leaned back in his chair. "I'm listening. Meet me tonight. Pier 17, South Street, Seaport. Come alone." "Why would I do that?" "Because if you don't, tomorrow's headlines will be very interesting." Did you know your CFO has been embezzling money through a shell company in the Caymans? Or that your head of R&D has been selling prototype designs to your competitors? Julian felt the room spin. You're lying. Bank transfer records say otherwise. So does the encrypted email trail. Would you like me to forward everything to the SEC, or shall we have a conversation first? The line went dead. At 11 p.m., Julian stood on the empty pier, the Hudson River stretching out before him like black glass. The city lights reflected on the water's surface, creating a shimmering pathway that seemed to lead nowhere. You came? Maya's voice came from behind him. He turned to find her emerging from the shadows, no longer dressed in a server's uniform. Tonight, she wore dark jeans, a leather jacket, and boots that clicked against the wooden planks as she approached. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, and in the moonlight, she looked dangerous. You really did hack my company, Julian said. Your security is pathetic, Maya replied, stopping a few feet away from him. A freshman computer science student could have done it. Why? Because you humiliated me in front of 200 people. Because you treated me like I was worthless. Because men like you need to learn that actions have consequences. Julian studied her face in the dim light. Is this about revenge? This is about justice. Maya pulled out a tablet and swiped across the screen. Your CFO, Marcus Webb, has been stealing from the company for 2 years. Small amounts at first, but it's escalated. He's taken nearly $4 million. She swiped again. Your head of R&D, Sarah Chen, has been selling your AI algorithms to 3 different competitors. The Singapore project failed because they knew exactly what you were, planning before you even announced it. Julian's mind reeled. How do you know all this? Because I've been watching your company for months, learning everything about it. About you. Maya stepped closer. Did you know that you work 18-hour days, not because you love what you do, but because you can't stand being alone with your thoughts? That you haven't had a real relationship in 4 years because intimacy terrifies you more than failure ever could? Stop. Julian's voice was barely a whisper. You want to know why I turned down those investment banking jobs? Maya continued, relentless. Because I researched the companies, studied their practices, and every single one of them was run by men just like you. Men who think money gives them the right to destroy people you don't know anything about. Me, I know everything about you. Maya held up her tablet again. I know about the boarding school where the older boys made your life hell, because your father was just a mechanic trying to better himself. I know about the scholarship you almost lost because you couldn't afford the required textbooks. I know about Rebecca. Julian's blood turned to ice. Don't. Your fiancé who left you 3 days before the wedding because you were already becoming the kind of man who valued success more than love. The woman who tried to warn you that you were losing yourself, but you chose ambition instead. Shut up. Julian's voice was dangerous now, his control fracturing. You became exactly what you once hated, Maya said softly. And now you're trapped in a prison of your own making, surrounded by wealth and power, but completely, utterly alone. Julian moved so fast that Maya barely had time to react. His hand closed around her wrist, pulling her against him. They stood there, inches apart, breathing hard. What do you want? He demanded. I want you to remember what it feels like to be human, Maya whispered. For a moment, they stared at each other, the tension crackling between them like electricity. Then Maya pulled away, leaving Julian feeling strangely bereft. The question is, she said, backing toward the shadows. Are you brave enough to tear down everything you've built to find out who you really are underneath? She tossed something at his feet. A USB drive. Evidence of your employees' betrayals, she said. Consider it a gift. But Julian, the next time we meet, it won't be as enemies. What will it be? Julian called out as she melted back into the darkness. Her voice drifted back to him, soft and haunting. That depends on whether you choose to be a victim of your past or the architect of your future. 2 months passed before Julian saw Maya again. He'd used the evidence she provided to clean house at his company, firing Marcus Webb and Sarah Chen, implementing new security protocols, and somehow finding himself working fewer hours for the first time in years. He told himself he wasn't looking for her. But his eyes searched every coffee shop, every street corner, every face in every crowd. When she finally appeared, it wasn't where he expected. Julian was leaving his therapist's office. Another change. Maya had somehow inspired when he spotted her across the street. Playing with a little girl in Central Park, the child had to be Emma, Maya's daughter. Even from a distance, Julian could see the family resemblance in their matching dimples when they laughed. He watched them for a long time, struck by how different Maya looked when she smiled. The hard edges softened, replaced by something luminous and warm. Julian. He spun around to find Dr. Sarah Martinez, his therapist. Behind him, Dr. Martinez. I didn't realize you lived in this area. I don't. I was visiting my daughter. She followed his gaze to Maya and Emma. Friend of yours. It's complicated. Dr. Martinez studied his face with the keen insight that made her so effective at her job. She's beautiful. And from the look on your face, she's important. Julian was quiet for a moment. She might be the most dangerous person I've ever met. Because she challenges you? Because she sees me. The real me. Not the image I've spent 15 years constructing. And that terrifies you. It should terrify me, Julian admitted. Instead, it makes me feel more alive than I have in years. The next evening, Julian did something he hadn't done in a decade. He showed up at Maya's apartment building without warning, without a plan. Without his usual armor of calculation and control, he stood outside her door for 5 full minutes before finally knocking. Maya opened the door wearing sweatpants and an oversized Columbia t-shirt. Her hair in a messy bun, she looked surprised but not displeased to see him. Julian. How did you find my address? Same way you found my private phone number, he replied. Though I hired better hackers. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Emma's asleep. Come in, but keep your voice down. Her apartment was small but warm. It's filled with books and Emma's artwork taped to the refrigerator. It felt more like home than Julian's penthouse ever had. Why are you here? Maya asked, curling up on her couch. Julian remained standing, too nervous to sit. I've been thinking about what you said, about choosing to be a victim or an architect. And I want to show you something. Will you come with me tomorrow night? Maya studied his face carefully. Where? Trust me, the next evening, Julian picked Maya up in a car she'd never seen before, a modest sedan instead of his usual town car. He drove her to a part of Queens she didn't recognize, finally stopping outside a converted warehouse. What is this place? Maya asked as they walked toward the entrance. Something I've been working on, Julian replied, his voice unusually uncertain. Something I've never shown anyone. Inside, Maya gasped. The warehouse had been converted into a state-of-the-art computer lab, but not the kind she expected from Julian's corporate world. This was different. Warmer. More human. It's a coding academy, Julian explained. For kids from low-income families, free tuition, free equipment, free meals. They learn programming, web design, app development, whatever they want to create. Maya walked through the space, taking in the colorful murals on the walls, the comfortable seating areas, the high-end computers that would have cost a fortune. How long have you been planning this? 2 years. But I couldn't figure out how to make it work. The bureaucracy, the logistics, the curriculum. Julian's hands were shoved deep in his pockets. Then I met you, and you made me realize I was overcomplicating it. Sometimes you just have to start helping people and figure out the details later. Maya turned to face him. Julian, this is incredible. But why show me? Because I want you to run it. The words hung in the air between them. Maya blinked, certain she'd misheard. What? Be the director. Design the curriculum. Hire the teachers. Make it everything you think it should be. Julian stepped closer. You have the education, the vision, the heart for this kind of work. And Emma could attend the after-school programs. You'd never have to work another serving job. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. It was everything she'd ever wanted. Meaningful work, financial security, a chance to make a real difference. There's one condition, Julian continued, and Maya's stomach dropped. What? Julian moved closer, close enough that she could see the vulnerability in his gray eyes. Dinner with me? Once a week? Just us, Julian. I'm not asking for a relationship, he said quickly. I'm asking for a chance. A chance to be the man I was before I let ambition destroy everything good in my life. Maya was quiet for a long time, torn between hope and fear. Between the life she'd been living and the life he was offering, yes, she whispered finally. Julian's face lit up with relief and something that looked dangerously like joy, but neither of them noticed the figure, watching from the shadows outside, or heard the camera clicking as it captured their embrace through the window. The next morning, Julian woke to find his phone buzzing incessantly. 37 missed calls, hundreds of text messages, and a notification that his name was trending on social media with growing dread. He opened the first news link. The headline made his blood run cold. Tech billionaire's secret affair with former employee. Exclusive photos inside the photos were damning. Julian and Maya embracing at the warehouse, their faces clearly visible. But it was the accompanying article that destroyed him. Someone had leaked Maya's personal information, her address, Emma's school, even details about her husband's death. Worse, they'd painted her as a gold digger who had seduced Julian for his money. Julian's phone rang. Maya, did you do this? Her voice was ice cold. Maya, no. I would never. Someone leaked my information to the press, Julian. Someone who had access to details that only you and your security team would know. I'll find out who did this. I'll fix it. You can't fix this. Maya's voice cracked with fury and pain. Emma's friends saw the articles. Her school is asking questions. I can't even leave my apartment without reporters following me. Maya, please. Let me help. You've helped enough. The line went dead. Julian immediately called his head of security, demanding answers. What he discovered made him physically sick. It was Thomas Gray, his most trusted advisor, the man who'd been with Julian since the beginning of his empire. Thomas had leaked everything to the press, motivated by jealousy and a twisted belief that Maya was manipulating Julian. I was protecting you, Thomas said when confronted. She was using you, just like Rebecca did. I couldn't let you make the same mistake twice. Julian stared at the man he'd considered a friend, a mentor, almost a father figure. You destroyed her, Julian said quietly. I saved you from being destroyed by her that night. Julian stood outside Maya's apartment building, rain soaking through his expensive coat. She wouldn't answer his calls, wouldn't respond to his texts. When she finally appeared, Emma clinging to her hand, her face was a mask of cold fury. Maya, please, let me explain. Explain what? That your trusted advisor decided to destroy my life to protect your reputation. That you're so surrounded by people who think I'm beneath you that this was inevitable? I fired him. I'll make a public statement clearing your name. You'll what, Julian? Fix this with money. Make it all go away with your influence? Maya's eyes blazed. This isn't a business problem you can solve. This is my life. Emma's life. Emma tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mama, who is this man? Maya looked down at her daughter, then back at Julian. When she spoke, her voice was deadly quiet. Nobody, sweetheart. He's nobody. 3 weeks after Maya called him nobody, Julian Blackstone did something that shocked the entire business world. He liquidated 40% of his assets and created the largest educational scholarship fund in New York's history. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was that he did it all in Maya Rivera's name, publicly crediting her as the inspiration for his philanthropy, and then he disappeared. Maya first heard about it on the morning news while getting Emma ready for school. Her hands shook as she watched Julian on live television, standing in front of reporters, looking exhausted but determined. Maya Rivera taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, Julian was saying. It's measured in the lives we touch and the differences we make. This foundation exists because she reminded me what it means to be human. The reporter pressed forward. Mr. Blackstone, given the recent media attention surrounding your relationship with Ms. Rivera. Some are calling this a publicity stunt. Julian's gray eyes hardened. Maya Rivera is the most brilliant, courageous, and principled person I've ever met. She has 2 master's degrees from Columbia, speaks 4 languages, could run circles around most of the executives in this city. The media attention she received was unwarranted, invasive, and beneath contempt. If anyone in this city should be ashamed, it's me for not protecting someone who deserves so much better. Then he looked directly into the camera, and Maya felt her breath catch. Maya, if you're watching this, I'm sorry for everything. You were right about me, about the man I'd become, about the prison I'd built around myself. You deserve a life free from the complications that knowing me brings. So this is goodbye. The broadcast ended with news that Julian Blackstone had stepped down as a CEO and was leaving New York indefinitely. Maya stared at the screen, tears streaming down her face, as Emma tugged on her shirt. Mama, why are you crying? Is that the man from outside our building? Maya knelt down and hugged her daughter tightly. Yes, sweetheart, that's him. He looked sad. Like you when you think I'm not watching. For 6 months, Maya heard nothing from Julian. She threw herself into running the coding academy he'd left in her care, watching it flourish beyond her wildest dreams. Kids from all over the city came to learn, to create, to dream bigger than their circumstances had previously allowed. But late at night, when Emma was asleep, Maya would find herself wondering where Julian had gone, whether he was okay, whether she'd been too harsh in sending him away. Her answer came in an unexpected form. Alina Rivera knocked on her door one rainy Thursday evening, holding a manila envelope. Mia, this came for you today. Special delivery. Maya's heart skipped when she saw the return address, a law firm in Boston. Inside was a letter and a photograph. The letter was from Julian's attorney, explaining that Julian had requested this be sent to Maya exactly 6 months after his departure. The photograph made her legs weak. It showed Julian in work clothes, covered in dust and paint, standing in front of a half-constructed building. He looked thinner, older, but somehow more at peace than she'd ever seen him. On the back, in his familiar handwriting, were just a few words. Teaching kids to code in rural Montana. Still learning to be human. Still thinking of you, Jay. Maya stared at the photograph for a long time, tracing the lines of his face with her finger. He really left, she whispered to her grandmother. Men like Julian Blackstone don't just leave, Alina replied gently. They run toward something or away from something. Which do you think it was? Maya thought about the man who had humiliated her at a charity gala. The man who had revealed himself to be capable of breathtaking cruelty and unexpected kindness in equal measure. The man who had seen through her defenses and recognized her pain because it mirrored his own. Both, she said finally. And what are you going to do about it? Maya looked at her grandmother, then at the photograph, then at the life she'd built in the space Julian had created for her. She thought about Emma, about security, about the fear that had governed her choices for 3 years. Then she thought about Julian, alone in Montana, trying to rebuild himself, brick by brick. I'm going to do something crazy, Maya said. 2 days later, Maya Rivera stood in the parking lot of a rural school in Whitefish, Montana, her heart hammering against her ribs. Through the windows, she could see Julian kneeling beside a young boy, patiently explaining something on a computer screen. He was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, his hair longer than she remembered, his face relaxed in a way she'd never seen before. She watched him for 10 minutes, building up her courage, until finally she walked inside. Julian looked up when the door opened, and his face went through a dozen emotions in the space of a heartbeat. Surprise, joy, fear, hope, and something that looked dangerously like love. Maya. His voice was barely a whisper. Hello, Julian. The children around them had gone quiet, sensing the weight of the moment. Julian slowly stood, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. What are you doing here? Something I should have done months ago. Maya stepped closer. I came to tell you that you were wrong. About what? About deserving a life free from complications? She smiled, and Julian felt his world realign. I don't want a life free from complications. I want a life full of the right complications. And you, Julian Blackstone, are exactly the right kind of complicated. Julian's careful composure finally cracked. Maya, I love you, she said simply. I've loved you since the night on the pier when you let me see past your armor. I was just too afraid to admit it. Julian crossed the room in 3 strides, cupping her face in his hands. Are you sure? Because I can't promise I won't mess this up. I'm still learning how to be the man you deserve. I don't need you to be perfect, Maya whispered. I need you to be real. Julian kissed her then, soft and desperate and full of promises. Neither of them dared to speak aloud. Around them, the children erupted in giggles and applause, breaking the spell. Julian and Maya broke apart, laughing and crying at the same time. There's something else, Maya said, reaching into her bag. I brought someone who wants to meet you. She pulled out a tablet and opened a video call. Emma's face appeared on the screen, grinning widely. Hi, Mr. Julian. Mama says you're the one who built my school. Julian's throat tightened with emotion. Hello, Emma. Your mama told me you're an artist. I am. I made you a picture. Emma held up a drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. It's me and Mama and you. Mama says you make her happy, so you make me happy too. Julian looked at Maya, who was watching him with tears in her eyes. Emma, sweetheart, Maya said gently, how would you feel about going on an adventure? Maybe living somewhere with mountains and snow? Emma's eyes went wide. Really? Can we build snowmen? Every winter, Julian promised, his voice thick with emotion. 6 months later, Julian stood in the same spot where he'd first seen Maya at the charity gala, but everything had changed. The ballroom was full again, but this time it was filled with the children from both academies, the one in New York and the new one in Montana, celebrating their coding projects and achievements. Maya moved through the crowd, no longer in a server's uniform, but in an elegant dress that she'd chosen herself, her face radiant as she watched their students demonstrate the apps and websites they'd created. Emma ran up to Julian, still small enough that he could lift her easily. Julian, look what I made. She showed him a tablet displaying a simple game she'd coded with colorful butterflies that danced across the screen. It's beautiful, Emma. Just like your mama. Emma giggled and hugged him tightly. I'm glad Mama found you again. Me too, little one. Me too, as the evening wound down. Julian found Maya standing by the same windows where he'd once stood alone, looking out at the city lights. Any regrets? He asked, slipping his arms around her waist. Maya leaned back against his chest. Just one. Julian's heart stopped. What? She turned in his arms, smiling. I regret that it took us so long to find each other. Julian kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. We found each other exactly when we were supposed to, when we were both ready to be brave enough for love, and now we write the rest of our story together. Outside, snow began to fall, dusting the city in white. Inside, 3 people who had found their way to each other despite impossible odds stood together, watching the world transform into something beautiful and new. Julian Blackstone had spent 15 years building an empire, but in the end, he discovered that the only thing worth building was a home. And home, he learned, wasn't a place at all. It was the sound of Emma's laughter echoing through their Montana house. It was Maya's hand in his as they walked through the snow. It was the quiet moments when they worked side by side, teaching children that their dreams were worth coding into reality. It was love, complicated and messy and absolutely perfect. And for the first time in his life, Julian Blackstone was exactly where he belonged. The end.